They told me self-care would make me stronger. They said it was the secret to aging well, the answer to grief, and the key to energy I thought I had lost. And for a while, I believed them. Every commercial, every ad, every video seemed to whisper the same thing: buy this, try that, and life will feel better. So I bought into the message. I stacked powders in my kitchen, lined my bathroom shelves with creams, downloaded apps to track my every breath and heartbeat. I paid for retreats that promised healing and gadgets that swore they'd give me rest. And yet, instead of peace, I found myself restless. Instead of clarity, I was drowning in clutter. At 71, I looked around and realized my so-called self-care had become another form of stress. I wasn't being healed, I was being hustled. And here's the truth many won't admit: a lot of what's marketed to people our age isn't care at all, it's business. It feeds on loneliness, fear of aging, and the hope that we can buy back time. But you can't. You can't purchase peace. You can't order calm off a shelf. What you can do, what I had to learn the hard way, is strip back the noise and discover that less is not only lighter, it's healthier. That's why today, I want to share the 10 toxic self-care trends I don't buy or do anymore. These are the things I gave up because they were stealing my joy instead of giving me life. And I'll tell you what I found when I finally let them go. But before I start, if this is already striking a chord with you, don't just hit that hype button. It's YouTube's way of lifting seniors' voices so people over 60 don't get drowned out. Every hype spreads this message, and together we can remind the world that aging well doesn't come from chasing every trend, it comes from knowing what truly matters. I'm Cedric Harlan, 71 years old, a retired history teacher from Pennsylvania. For more than 40 years I stood in front of classrooms, guiding young people through stories of history, teaching them about choices, mistakes, victories, and lessons learned across time. I thought I understood how to learn from the past, how to avoid repeating errors. But when my wife passed, all that knowledge seemed to slip through my fingers. The silence in the house after she was gone was deafening. I found myself wandering the aisles of stores, scrolling late at night through websites, watching advertisements that promised healing, energy, and renewal. Each one seemed to call to me at my weakest moment. This cream would erase the years, that powder would restore vitality, that gadget would bring rest, that retreat would repair what grief had broken. And because I was lonely and desperate for direction, I bought into it all. My cabinets became lined with bottles I barely touched, my sink cluttered with jars and serums, my nights interrupted by devices meant to track my every heartbeat and breath. What started as a search for comfort turned into a house full of reminders that I was trying to buy peace but only purchasing noise. Instead of feeling stronger, I felt smaller, buried under routines and products that promised much and delivered little. I would walk from room to room and see clutter where I once had clarity, gadgets where I once had space for my grandchildren's laughter, shelves stuffed with powders instead of books I once loved to teach. That's when I realized something hard. The more I tried to care for myself by following these trends, the more I was moving away from the very life I wanted. Healing wasn't waiting for me at the bottom of a vitamin bottle or inside a spa brochure. Healing had to come from simplicity, from letting go, from returning to what actually gave me joy. So I began stripping it all away, one by one. These are the 10 toxic self-care trends I no longer buy into or do, because each time I let one go, I found another piece of my life returning to me. Supplements were the first trap I fell into, and they were also the first toxic trend I had to walk away from. After my wife passed, I wanted something, anything, that would give me strength and help me feel like I could carry on. So I started buying every vitamin and powder that was marketed to people my age. My kitchen cupboards looked less like a home and more like the shelves of a health store. There were jars of collagen, tubs of protein powder, memory boosters that promised sharper thinking, and little bottles that swore they could keep my joints moving like they did when I was 30. At first, opening those cupboards gave me a strange sense of security. It felt like I was doing something, like I was taking control of my health and my future. But the reality was different. Most of those bottles sat half-used, collecting dust. They weren't giving me life, they were just giving me clutter. And the worst part? My doctor warned me that some of those unregulated supplements could clash with the medication I was already taking for my heart. That was a sobering moment. Here I was, trying to make myself healthier, but I was actually risking more harm than good. That wake-up call forced me to see the truth. The supplement industry thrives on fear, especially the fear of aging. They promise energy in a pill, memory in a capsule, strength in a powder. But in reality, they sell hope in plastic bottles, and for seniors like me, it's an expensive illusion. When I finally started clearing those shelves, it wasn't just about making space in my kitchen. It was about making space in my mind. Instead of grabbing the latest powder, I began focusing on real food, real rest, and the routines that have stood the test of time. A walk outside, a plate filled with vegetables, a good night's sleep, those were the things that actually made a difference. Letting go of the supplement overload was like letting go of false promises. It reminded me that caring for myself doesn't mean collecting products, it means choosing wisely, keeping it simple, and trusting what really works. And I know I'm not the only one who's been there. So let me ask you, what's one supplement you regret buying? Share it in the comments, because your story might help another senior avoid the same trap. The second toxic self-care trend I had to let go of was skincare obsession. I still remember the night I sat in front of the bathroom mirror, lined up like a soldier ready for battle, with jars, bottles, and droppers spread across the counter. I had watched a video where someone swore by a 15-step skincare routine: cleansers, toners, serums, oils, creams, masks, and more. They promised that if I followed it, I'd look 10 years younger, maybe even feel it too. Out of curiosity and maybe a little desperation, I tried it. By the time I finished layering all those products, my skin didn't look rejuvenated, it looked inflamed. My face turned red, tight, and irritated, as though my skin was trying to tell me, this isn't care, it's punishment. And when I stepped back from the mirror, I realized I wasn't just irritated in my skin, I was irritated in my spirit. My one simple bathroom counter, where I used to place a bar of soap and a toothbrush, was now drowning under a crowd of bottles and labels. It was clutter disguised as self-care. That was the moment I knew this was not for me. I don't need a dozen products to feel like I'm worth something. What I needed was simplicity. So I went back to basics: one gentle cleanser, one moisturizer, and one sunscreen. That's it. And you know what? My skin felt better, my counter looked clearer, and my mornings felt lighter. I realized skincare companies aren't just selling creams, they're selling insecurity. They whisper that wrinkles make us less, that lines take away our worth, that only their product can keep us visible in a world that overlooks seniors. But the truth is, every line on my face is a history lesson. It's proof I've lived, loved, and endured. I no longer see skincare as a magic trick to erase age. I see it as a way to keep myself clean, comfortable, and cared for without the chaos. Giving up that obsession gave me back my dignity and my peace. And now I want to hear from you. Would you stick with 15 products, or just 3? Comment below, because your answer might help someone else realize that sometimes less really is more. The third toxic self-care trend I had to give up was chasing extreme fitness fads designed for seniors. It sounds strange, doesn't it? You'd think a workout labeled senior-friendly would be safe and helpful. That's what I thought when I signed up for an online bootcamp that promised to rebuild strength, burn fat, and reverse aging, all from the comfort of my living room. The instructor was full of energy, bouncing around the screen, assuring me that if I just followed along, I'd feel decades younger. So I tried. I gave it everything I had. But by the second day, my knees were screaming, my back felt like it had been through a war, and I could barely get out of bed without groaning. I wasn't building strength, I was breaking myself down. And for what? To try to keep up with a program that was more about hype than health. That painful week taught me an important truth: movement should never leave you feeling punished. It should leave you feeling supported, energized, and ready to enjoy life. So I changed my approach. I stopped forcing myself into extreme routines that weren't designed for my body. Instead, I returned to something much simpler: morning walks around the lake near my home. Just me, the fresh air, and the sound of water moving gently against the shore. I added gentle stretches in the evening, nothing dramatic, nothing flashy, but movements that loosen my joints and keep my body flexible. And you know what? I began to look forward to exercise again. It wasn't a dreaded session on a screen, it was a peaceful ritual that made me feel alive. Fitness doesn't have to be a performance. For seniors like me, it should be about longevity, balance, and joy. The best part is that these simple movements cost nothing and carry no risk of injury. I can walk, stretch, and breathe freely without worrying about overexertion. That's real care. So let me ask you, what's your safe and simple way to stay active? Share it in the comments, because your routine might inspire another senior to find the movement that keeps them strong without breaking them down. The fourth toxic self-care trend I let go of was detox cleanses. I can still remember the week I decided to try a juice diet after hearing that it would reset my system and give me energy like never before. The ads were everywhere: bright bottles filled with greens, promises of flushing out toxins, and stories of people claiming to feel reborn after just a few days. I thought, maybe this is what I need. So I stocked my fridge with juices, teas, and powders, and for 7 days I told myself I was giving my body the gift of cleansing. But the reality was much harsher. By the second day, I felt weak. By the fourth, I was so dizzy that when I stood in church to sing with the congregation, I nearly fainted. That moment was my wake-up call. I wasn't healing myself, I was starving myself. What I learned later is that our bodies are already designed to detox. We have kidneys, livers, lungs, all working every day to keep us clean from the inside out. No juice or miracle tea can do that better than the organs God already gave us. And yet, seniors like me are some of the easiest targets for these fads. We're told that age equals toxins, that the only way to stay well is to buy into expensive cleanses that strip away not just our money but our strength. I realized I was paying to feel worse, not better. When I finally gave it up, I returned to balance, drinking water, eating real food, and trusting the natural systems in my body to do their job. It wasn't about restriction anymore. It was about nourishment. That shift gave me back energy I hadn't felt in years, and it taught me that true health doesn't come in a 3-day cleanse package. It comes from steady choices that don't leave you fainting in church. So let me ask you, be honest with me. Have you ever tried a cleanse? Did it actually help you, or did it leave you feeling worse? Share in the comments, because your story might stop someone else from falling for the same trap I did. The fifth toxic self-care trend I let go of was wellness tech gadgets. I'll admit, when I first saw all those ads for smart rings, wrist trackers, and sleep monitors, I was intrigued. They promised to give me insight into my health, track every heartbeat, and even tell me how well I was resting at night. I thought, maybe this is what I need, a way to take control of my body as I get older. So I bought one. The first few nights, I was excited to check my results. But very quickly, the excitement turned into anxiety. One night, the device told me I had only reached 45% recovery. The next day, I walked around worrying, questioning every yawn, every ache, wondering if I was somehow failing at sleeping. Another time, the tracker told me I had tossed and turned too much, and I spent the entire morning replaying those words in my head instead of enjoying my coffee. Before long, I wasn't resting better, I was resting worse, because I was constantly anxious about what the numbers would say. That's when it hit me, the very thing that was supposed to bring me peace was stealing it. So I took the device off. That night, without the distraction of buzzing alerts and performance scores, I reached for something different, my old Bible and a well-worn book I'd been meaning to finish. I read a few pages, whispered a prayer, and closed my eyes without worrying about how many hours of REM sleep I would rack up. And to my surprise, I slept better than I had in weeks. I realized I didn't need a gadget to tell me if I was tired. My body already knows. What I needed was calm, not constant measurement. Since then, I've learned that true rest doesn't come from a device, it comes from stillness, from trust, from allowing myself to drift off without judgment. For me, prayer and reading before bed restored something that no gadget ever could, real peace. So let me ask you, do gadgets help you relax, or do they stress you out the way they did for me? Drop your answer in the comments, because your perspective might help another senior decide what really belongs on their nightstand. The sixth toxic self-care trend I let go of was expensive healing retreats. I remember the glossy brochure that first caught my attention. Pictures of calm beaches, people meditating at sunrise, long tables filled with colorful foods. The promise was clear: spend a week here, pay the price, and you'll come back renewed, reconnected, and at peace. I was vulnerable at the time, still carrying grief and searching for something to make me feel whole again. So I took the leap. I spent thousands of dollars on travel, lodging, and all the extras that came with it. For 7 days, I followed the program: early morning yoga, guided journaling, group meditations, carefully curated meals. On the surface, it was beautiful. But inside, I felt lonelier than ever. Surrounded by strangers, I realized that no matter how scenic the setting, real connection can't be scheduled or purchased. The conversations felt shallow, the exercises scripted. When I came home, my house felt just as empty, my heart just as heavy, only now my wallet was lighter too. That was the turning point. I understood that healing wasn't something I could buy in a package deal. True healing had to grow in real relationships, in ordinary places. The following week, I went to a small gathering at the community center down the street. A few other seniors were sitting around a table, sipping coffee, laughing over old stories, inviting me into their circle. In that simple, unpolished space, I found more warmth and connection than I ever had at that luxury retreat. That moment showed me that healing is not about palm trees or spa music, it's about people, presence, and being seen. Since then, I've stopped chasing expensive escapes. I invest instead in small, consistent gatherings that cost next to nothing but mean everything. Coffee with friends, a local class, a shared walk in the park, those are my real retreats. So let me ask you, would you spend $3,000 on a retreat, or $30 on a class that gives you true connection? Be honest in the comments, because your answer might help someone rethink what healing really looks like. The seventh toxic self-care trend I let go of was buying so-called minimalist organizers. It sounds almost laughable now, but at one point, I convinced myself that the path to a simpler life was through shopping. I walked into one of those home goods stores, and the rows of sleek bins, matching baskets, and clear boxes caught my eye. They looked so neat and perfect in the display, like owning them would somehow transform my house into one of those magazine pictures. I pulled out my wallet without thinking twice. Soon, my closets and shelves were filled with those shiny new containers, each labeled and stacked with care. At first, I felt proud. Everything looked uniform, tucked away, hidden from view. But after a while, I realized the truth: I hadn't decluttered a thing. I had simply buried my clutter inside prettier boxes. The things I didn't use, didn't need, and didn't even remember owning were all still there, just hiding behind plastic lids and tidy labels. It was like sweeping dirt under the rug. It looked good for a moment, but the mess hadn't gone anywhere. That's when I had to face the hard truth: minimalism isn't about buying better storage, it's about needing less to begin with. Buying organizers gave me the illusion of control, but letting go of what I didn't need gave me freedom. I started opening those bins and asking myself, why am I keeping this? Do I really need it, or am I just storing my guilt in a box? Slowly, the bins emptied, the shelves cleared, and the containers I once thought were the solution ended up in the donation pile themselves. And you know what? I didn't miss them. I discovered that the peace I was looking for never came from acrylic boxes or bamboo baskets. It came from space, lightness, and the courage to part with what no longer served me. So let me ask you, what's one organizer you regret buying? Tell us in the comments, because your story might help another senior realize that minimalism doesn't come from buying more stuff, it comes from learning to live with less. The eighth toxic self-care trend I let go of was painful body hacks. One of the most extreme I tried was the ice bath craze. I kept hearing younger influencers swear that plunging into freezing water could reverse aging, boost energy, and make you feel like a brand new person. At first, I laughed at the idea. But after seeing it over and over, I started to wonder if maybe I was missing something. So one morning, I filled my tub with cold water and ice, convincing myself this was going to shock my body into feeling young again. The moment I stepped in, my breath caught in my chest. It wasn't refreshing, it was brutal. My muscles clenched, my joints screamed, and I counted the seconds until I could climb out. But the worst part came later. My arthritis flared so badly I could barely move for days. The promise of feeling 10 years younger left me feeling 20 years older. That was my wake-up call. I realized I had fallen into a dangerous trap, believing that hurting myself was somehow proof of discipline or strength. But at this stage in life, health isn't about pushing the body to extremes, it's about protecting it so it can carry us through the years with dignity. Since then, I've embraced gentler, kinder practices. A warm shower in the morning to loosen stiff joints. Gentle stretching to keep my body flexible. A short walk outside to breathe fresh air and feel the sun on my face. These things may not look dramatic on social media, but they give me real comfort, real relief, and real peace. No hack, no gimmick, just simple care. I've learned that my body doesn't need to be shocked into youth, it needs to be honored for the miles it has already carried me. Pain is not a badge of honor. Comfort, mobility, and ease are the true victories at this age. So let me ask you, if you had the choice, which would you pick? An ice bath that leaves you shivering, or a warm bath that wraps you in relief? Share your answer in the comments, because your perspective might help another senior rethink what real self-care should feel like. The ninth toxic self-care trend I let go of was toxic productivity routines, the kind that insist your value is tied to how early you wake up or how much you can cram into your day. For a while, I bought into the hype of the so-called miracle morning. I watched videos and read articles that said the secret to success, happiness, and even longevity was waking up at 4:30 in the morning, exercising before the sun, journaling, meditating, and knocking out a list of tasks before most people had finished breakfast. It sounded impressive, even inspiring. So I tried it. For a week, I forced myself out of bed in the dark, stumbling around half asleep to keep up with the routine. At first, I felt proud just for pushing through, like I was proving I could still keep up with younger people who swore by these methods. But pride quickly gave way to exhaustion. By the middle of the week, I was cranky, drained, and irritable. Instead of feeling accomplished, I felt like I was dragging myself through the day, with less patience, less focus, and less joy. I wasn't living better, I was simply living tired. That's when it hit me, I wasn't meant to compete with the clock or prove my worth by rising before dawn. At 71, my mornings are precious. They're not a race, they're a gift. So I let that routine go and gave myself permission to wake naturally with the sunrise. Now, instead of rushing to tick off boxes on a checklist, I sit with a warm cup of coffee, listen to the quiet of the morning, and watch the light spill across the sky. That simple ritual fills me with more peace than any productivity hack ever did. I learned that real self-care isn't about squeezing more out of myself, it's about savoring the moments I have. Life after 60 isn't a competition, it's an invitation to live fully at our own pace. So let me ask you, are you an early bird who loves the dawn, or a slow morning person who prefers to ease into the day? Let's hear it in the comments, because there's no one right answer, just the rhythm that brings you joy. The 10th toxic self-care trend I let go of was cluttered calm spaces. It might sound ironic, but in my search for peace, I actually managed to create more chaos. I had this idea that if I could just design the perfect Zen corner, I'd finally feel the calm I was chasing. So I started adding things. A Himalayan salt lamp, because someone said it would cleanse the air. A tabletop fountain, because flowing water was supposed to soothe the mind. A handful of candles for ambience, essential oil diffusers for the scent, and even a meditation cushion that looked good in the catalog but never quite fit my old knees. Piece by piece, I filled the corner of my living room until it looked like a showroom of every product marketed as calm. But when I tried to sit there, I couldn't even relax. The fountain gurgled too loudly, the salt lamp collected dust, and the candles felt more like a fire hazard than a source of peace. Instead of calm, I felt crowded. That's when I realized I had been sold a lie, that tranquility comes from buying more things. The truth is, tranquility comes from space, not stuff. So one day, I cleared it all out. I packed away the gadgets and gimmicks, and I left just a single comfortable chair, a soft lamp, my Bible, and a journal. Suddenly, the space breathed again. For the first time, I could sit without distraction, read quietly, pray, or simply stare out the window as the light changed. That corner stopped being a display of products and became a sanctuary of stillness. And it reminded me of something important: peace is not found in clutter, even if that clutter is labeled wellness. Peace is found in simplicity, in creating space for your heart and mind to rest. Now, every time I walk past that chair, I feel invited to pause, not pressured to perform some ritual. It's my reminder that less is truly more. So let me ask you, what's the one thing that makes your space peaceful? Comment below, because your answer might inspire someone else to create calm without the clutter. Now my shelves are clear, my mornings are light, and my days feel breathable. At 71, I've discovered that real self-care isn't something you can buy in a bottle or unpack from a box. It's something you live, moment by moment, in the choices you make. I used to believe that comfort and healing were out there somewhere, waiting in the next product or the next trend. But after letting go of 10 so-called self-care habits, I realized that healing was never about adding more. It was about removing the noise that had been crowding my life. When I open my cabinets now, I don't see clutter or half-empty jars. I see space. Space to breathe, space to welcome my grandchildren, space to live without the constant reminder that I was once trying to buy my way into peace. When I wake in the morning, I don't rush through a strict routine or force myself to meet someone else's idea of discipline. I rise with the sun, pour a cup of coffee, sit by the window, and let the light ease me into the day. Those small, ordinary rituals are more healing than all the money I wasted on products that promised miracles. And when I look at my evenings, I see the difference too. No gadgets blinking on my wrist, no fountain bubbling too loud in a corner. Just me, my chair, my Bible, and a journal. Simplicity has become my sanctuary. If you're listening to this, I want you to know it's never too late to let go of what weighs you down. You don't have to follow every trend to take care of yourself. You don't need cream stacked to the ceiling or $1,000 retreat to feel whole. Sometimes, the bravest act of self-care is saying no, no to clutter, no to chaos, no to false promises, and saying yes to quiet, to freedom, and to peace. If my story gave you clarity, don't just hit that hype button right now. Share this with a friend who needs peace, and subscribe to Wise Aging Seniors. Because real self-care is lighter living, not cluttered living. And in my next video, I'll reveal the 7 decluttering lies seniors must stop believing.